What's going on, guys? By the way, before we get started, let me say that if you like this video or any of the videos I've made, please feel free to like, share, and subscribe. And also you can click that bell so that you'll be notified when I make another video. I don't make them that often, especially don't make them every day, so you don't have to worry about your email being inundated with emails letting you know that I've released another video. Anyway, what I'm going to be doing in this video is reading an article. And the article is a very good one. It's not a new article, but it's very informative, and it's about the immigration problem that we're having now. But it goes deep into the cause of it. Now, one of the things that motivated me to do this is that I've been noticing something lately that's kind of weird, and that is a lot of brothers and sisters, meaning black people, taking a very American imperialistic attitude towards people coming from the South. It's very important to understand why these people are coming here, and the reason that they're coming here is because of American foreign policy. So you can't worship the people who are basically burning these people's house down and then at the same time complain because they're coming here. We're doing things in their homeland that we should not be doing. We're interfering in their politics. They elect someone that we don't like, but they love them. But we decide that we're going to cause trouble down there, cause all sorts of violence. We're causing people to be killed. We're causing women to be raped. We're putting guns in the hands of thugs and fascists. And we're just creating problems in their country. We're turning their country into a hotbed. So, it's important to understand that, people just don't pick up and leave a place, a place that consists of everything that they love, their daughters, their sons, their fathers, their mothers, their uncles, their aunts, their friends, just their homes, man. We are responsible for the circumstances that's causing these people to come here. And, when you burn your neighbor's house down, your neighbor might want to come live with you. And though that may not be comfortable for you, if you're a gracious person, then you'll feel that you have no choice but to let them come live with you until they can get their house rebuilt. It's the least you can do. You burn their house down. And that's what we're doing in the United States. We're burning these people's country to the ground politically. And we're creating environments that make young girls get on birth control to make the journey here because they know they might get raped on the journey here. The journey here, by the way, is very dangerous. And it's not just because of civilians. There is law enforcement on the border victimizing these people. A lot of these girls are getting raped by law enforcement, by Border Patrol. But there are girls who are actually taking birth control because they know the chance of them being raped on the journey here is pretty high. That's deep. But anyway, let's get into this article. Hondurans fleeing poverty and violence, who make up most of the participants of a caravan estimated between 7,000 and 8,000 people, are slowly moving through Mexico in hopes of reaching the United States and receiving refuge. President Trump has responded by characterizing the caravan as, among other unflattering things, an onslaught and an assault on the United States. Trump's statements, which do not accurately characterize the makeup and motivations of the migrants, have pushed many media outlets to rebut his false claims. The mainstream narrative of such movements of people often reduces the cause of migrations to factors unfolding in migrants' home countries. In reality, migration is often a manifestation of a profoundly unequal and exploitative relationship between countries from which people migrate and countries of destination. As I have learned through many years of research on immigration and border policing, the history of relations between Hondurans and the United States is a prime example of these dynamics. Understanding this is vital to making immigration policy more effective and ethical. I first visited Honduras in 1987 to do research. As I walked around the city of Comayagua, many thought that I, a white male with short hair in his early 20s, was a U.S. soldier. This was because hundreds of U.S. soldiers were stationed at the nearby Palmarola Air Base at the time. Until shortly before my arrival, Many of them were frequent Camagua, particularly as red zone of female sex workers. U.S. military presence in Honduras and the roots of Honduran migration to the United States are closely linked. It began in the late 1890s when U.S.-based banana companies first became active there. As historian Walter Lefebvre writes in Inevitable Revolutions, the United States and Central America, American companies built railroads, established their own banking system, and bribed government officials at a dizzying pace. As a result, the Caribbean coast became a foreign-controlled enclave that systematically swung the whole of Honduras into a one-crop economy whose wealth was carried off to New Orleans, New York, and later Boston. By 1914, U.S. banana interests owned almost 1 million acres of Honduras' best land. These holdings grew through the 1920s to such an extent that, as Lefebvre asserts, Honduran peasants had no hope of access to their nation's good soil. Over a few decades, U.S. capital also came to dominate the country's banking and mining sectors, a process facilitated by the weak state of Honduras' domestic business sector. This was coupled with direct U.S. political military interventions to protect U.S. interests in 1907 and 1911. Such developments made Honduras' ruling class dependent on Washington for support. A central component of this ruling class was and remains the Honduran military. By the mid-1960s, it had become, in Lefebvre's words, the country's most developed political institution, one that Washington played a key role in shaping. This was especially the case during the presidency of Ronald Reagan in the 1980s. At that time, U.S. political and military policy was so influential that many referred to the Central American country as the USS Honduras and the Pentagon Republic. As part of his effort to overthrow the Sandinista government in the neighboring Nicaragua and roll back the region's leftist movements, the Reagan administration temporarily stationed several hundred U.S. soldiers in Honduras. Moreover, it trained and sustained Nicaragua's Contra rebels on Honduran soil, while greatly increasing military aid and arms sales to the country. The Reagan years also saw the construction of numerous joint Honduran-U.S. military bases and installations. Such moves greatly strengthened the militarization of Honduras society. In turn, political repressions rose. There was a dramatic increase in the number of political assassinations, disappearances, and illegal detentions. The Reagan administration also played a big role in the restructuring of the Honduran economy. It did so by strongly pushing for internal economic reforms with a focus on exporting manufactured goods. It also helped deregulate and destabilize the global coffee trade, upon which Honduras heavily depended. These changes made Honduras more amenable to the interests of global capital. They disrupted traditional forms of agriculture and undermined an already weak social safety net. These decades of U.S. involvement in Honduras set the stage for Honduran immigration to the United States, which began to markedly increase in the 1990s. In the post-war Reagan era, Honduras remained a country scarred by a heavy-handed military, significant human rights abuses, and pervasive poverty. Still, liberalizing tendencies of successive governments and grassroots pressure provided openings for democratic forces. They contributed, for example, to the election of Manuel Zelaya, a liberal reformist, as president in 2006. He led on progressive measures such as raising the minimum wage. He also tried to organize a plebiscite to allow for a constituent assembly to replace the country's constitution, which had been written during a military government. However, these efforts incurred the ire of the country's oligarchy, leading to his overthrow by the military in June 2009. The 2009 coup, more than any other development, explains the increase in Honduran migration across the southern U.S. border in the last few years. The Obama administration has played an important role in these developments. Though it officially decried Zelaya's ouster, it equivocated on whether or not it constituted a coup, which would have required the U.S. to stop sending most aid to the country. Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, in particular, sent conflicting messages and worked to ensure that Zelaya did not return to power. This is contrary to the wishes of the Organization of American States, the leading hemispheric political forum composed of the 35 member countries of the Americas including the Caribbean. Several months after the coup, Clinton supported a highly questionable election aimed at legitimating the post-coup government. Strong military ties between the U.S. and Honduras persist. Several hundred U.S. troops are stationed at Sotocano Air Base, formerly Pomarola, in the name of fighting the drug war and providing humanitarian aid. Since the coup, writes historian Dana Frank, a series of corrupt administrations have unleashed open criminal control of Honduras from top to bottom of the government. The Trump administration's recognition in December 2017 of President Juan Orlando Hernandez's re-election after a process marked by deep irregularities, fraud, and violence. This continues Washington's long-standing willingness to overlook corruption in Honduras as long as the country's ruling elite serve what are defined as U.S. economic and geopolitical interests. Organized crime, drug traffickers, and the country's police heavily overlap. The frequent politically motivated killings are rarely punished. In 2017, Global Witness, an international non-governmental organization, found that Honduras was the world's deadliest country for environmental activists. Although its once sky-high murder rate has declined over the last few years, the continuing exodus of many youth demonstrates that violent gangs still plague urban neighborhoods. Meanwhile, post-coup governments have intensified an increasingly unregulated free market form of capitalism that makes life unworkable for many by undermining the country's limited social safety net and greatly increasing socioeconomic inequality. Government spending on health and education, for example, has declined in Honduras. Meanwhile, the country's poverty rate has risen markedly. These contribute to the growing pressures that push many people to migrate. What will happen to the thousands of people now moving northward? If the recent past is any indication, many will likely stay in Mexico. What the Trump administration will ultimately do with those who arrive at the U.S. southern border is unclear. Regardless, the role played by the United States in shaping the cause of this migration raises ethical questions about its responsibility towards those fleeing from the ravages its policies have helped to produce. Well, guys, we've reached the end of the article, which unfortunately means that we've also reached the end of the video. It's bad for me because I like hanging out with you guys, which reminds me, if you liked the video, please like, share, and subscribe. Or if you didn't like it, look, go ahead and also give it a thumbs down. I welcome all opinions. But anyway, until next time, as usual, stay safe.